Hey, everybody. Thanks for joining us. You're watching On the Right Side, our weekly podcast from the amazing The America First Warehouse. A special shout out to Joe the Box here. You got to come visit the place. So go to theamericafirstwarehouse.com and then follow us on X at AmericaFirstWH. At America First WH. I'm David Zier at Real America's Voice News, and this is my co-host, Steve Levy, former Suffolk County Executive, former New York State Assemblyman, fiscal conservative, Democrat turned Republican. What other smart things have you done?
Oh, I head up the very smart, fiscally conservative think tank, Center for Cost-Effective Government, and run a newspaper called Long Island Life and Politics.
And you have a party coming up for that, right?
I do, yeah. March 9th, we're going to be talking about the crazy things going on in this leftist blue New York State and how it's just crushing people.
Where can people go to your website? Because you publish an annual report on government waste as well.
Yeah. The Center for Cost-Effective Government, our latest white paper, which is being issued this week, talks about, and we got to talk about this at another session that we have, how municipal unions should not be allowed to give money.
I am 100%
to the elected officials who negotiate their contracts. Folks, if you do that in the private sector, you go to jail. If you
what they do is they give money to both sides.
Right.
So then whoever gets elected owes them a
payback. They hedge their bets. But our point is, how is this constitutional? It is a blatant violation of the due process rights of the taxpayer.
I agree.
And we're hoping
you're taking
we're pushing
taxpayer money that pays these people's salaries that's going to donate to your elected officials.
It's called government against itself, where the government is the special interest, the unions, is paying the government to give the special interest more stuff at the expense of the taxpayer, who the government is supposed to be represented. It's got to be unconstitutional. You can find that on centerforcosteffectivegovernment.org or my other website, stevelevy.info, where we have all of my other writings. So,
all right. Well, we have a great show for you today. I just got back from Hill Air Force Base in Utah. I traveled 6,000 miles with the Secretary of Energy and the Assistant Secretary of War. We did the world's first nuclear airlift of a reactor on board a C-17 from March Air Force Base in California to Hill Air Force Base in Utah. We'll get into the significance of that. It's a game changer for American energy dominance. But also, I was on the ground at Fort Bragg with President Trump and Melania last Friday, congratulating our airborne troops and others at Bragg, the largest base in America, on their participation in the extraordinarily successful and ultra-sophisticated Venezuela raid. And I interviewed Peter Schweizer last week, so we're going to talk about Peter Schweizer. Why don't we start with that?
I can't wait, because this is something that I've been writing about forever in my articles to Newsmax and the Washington Examiner. Many of us have been, shouting into the wind for the longest time that this whole illegal immigration dilemma, the problem, it's been orchestrated by Democrats. At first, years and years ago, it was the Republicans, the Wall Street Journal type Republicans, the Chamber of Commerce Republicans, who were looking the other way while all the cheap labor came in. But that was a long time ago. But more recently, it's been propagated by the Democrats, who have a game plan. And Schweizer lays it out beautifully in his book, Invisible Coup, and I know you interviewed him, but he basically lays it out. Look, this is a plot, and it's being done by not only the Democrats, but foreign agents, billionaires with ties to communist China, to bring in these people who do not share liberal democracy values. They come from areas where Sharia law exists and other non-democratic areas, and it's all for the purpose of having more illegals counted census time. Schweizer notes at one point that California would have 11 fewer congressional members if illegal aliens were not counted in the census. So they want that, and then they want to legalize them. And he goes through line by line, following the money, going back to the Clinton administration, on how it's a plot to just bring them in for power.
And he also gets into that there's like 40 or 50 Mexican consulates throughout the country,
Yep.
whereas most countries have 2 or 3 here, I think, or a few more than that, where, the Mexican parliament is active in trying to change America.
Or to take back
Right, what they
the
call
Southwest, which they thought was taken away. Right.
The Reconquista. And that's pretty exceptional. And there's this massive lobbying effort that goes on in the United States of the Mexican government inside the United States. And remember, 20% of the economy in Mexico, 10 or 20% is remittances just by Wells Fargo.
Yeah.
Trump should tax that. But also, he says that there's 1 million Chinese citizens who can vote in this next election who don't live in the United States. They live
Yeah.
in China because of the birthright citizenship, right?
It is truly remarkable. I mean, some of the other great facts that he lists here, okay? He says that only 50% of naturalized citizens believe schools should teach children to be proud Americans. This is 50% of those who were not born here. While 81% of people who were born here believe that you should teach people, your kids, to be proud of America, right? Other stats, he said, only 37% of the foreign-born here agreed, compared to 67% of American-born natives, okay, who consider themselves citizens of the citizens of the world. So, in other words, the majority of these people coming in over the border are considering themselves first citizens of the world rather than Americans.
Yeah.
You had a Dominican congresswoman who was proudly saying, said on the floor of Congress, I consider myself first a Dominican and then an American. So Schweitzer lays all of these things out, and he notes that it all started back with Clinton.
Yeah.
When, for the 1996 election, the idea was, we've got all of these illegal aliens, we've got all of these people waiting for their citizenship. It takes a long time, and you had 2 requirements. You had to have the criminal background check, and you had to be able to speak English. So Clinton Gore made the decision, they put the word out, just ignore it. Don't do the background check and gloss over that they're not speaking English. 1.2 million additional people were made citizens, and 85% voted for Clinton.
I can add to that at length, and I could do it here or next segment, but I'll touch on it right now. That's why we had Lewinsky Gate, because what happened was in the 96 election against Bob Dole, he tried to give amnesty or legalize like 700,000 plus illegal aliens for the election because they know they were going to vote for him. Mm-hmm. And the FBI warned him that about 100,000 of them were criminals or under watch by the government. And INS, the INS head, which is now ICE, the Immigration Naturalization Service, basically said they cried foul. And the Republicans asked for a special prosecutor. So they agreed on David Shippers, who was a Democrat, who prosecuted Sam Giancana in the 60s.
Right.
He was a University of Chicago law professor. He was a priest for a while. He has 9 children. He's an honorable guy. He's a stand-up guy. And Linda Tripp, who was ignored when Vince Foster supposedly killed himself in the park, Hillary Clinton had all the files removed from the office and smashed the hard drive beyond recognition, so the FBI couldn't use it as evidence for all the stuff that was going on with
did
the
that
Clintons.
again with a little smashing,
right?
I remember.
Yeah, right. But what
2016.
happened? And what happened was Linda Tripp testified that she saw all that happen and the car and the hand trucks taking out the computer files of Vince Foster, and they ignored her. So her payback was when Monica Lewinsky came to her with the semen-stained dress. She recorded it, and while the special prosecutor was looking into the claims about Clinton's effort to legalize these citizens, she came forward. We never would have had Lewinsky Gate without the Republicans asking for that investigation on making the illegals American so they can vote in the 96 election.
Well, there's another take on that. On page 68 of Schweitzer's book, and I have no interest financially in Schweitzer's book other than it's a really great book that I recommend people read.
Yeah.
He says, in Orange County, California, the Latino advocacy group, Hermandad Mexicana National Network aggressively helped people apply for citizenship and register to vote And the prosecutors concluded that the employees willfully and unlawfully helped 227 non-citizens register to vote and fill out the form. Now, that's not a huge number, okay, but say they found 632 eligible to register to vote. Here's the catch, though. No one was ever indicted. So even though it might have been a small number there, the word got out that if you do this stuff, you play these shenanigans, nothing's going to happen to you, because the party in power wanted this to happen. And interestingly, Tony Blair, who was like the kissing cousin of Bill Clinton over in England, did the same thing in England, where they started to have all of the non-citizens become citizens. And ever since then, the left in Europe and in America have decided that the way they gain and maintain power is by bringing in these new voters who have no cohesion with your present systems
And we'll
of
get
government.
into that in the next block because, you know, it's the Hijra. It's the propagation, the restoration of the caliphate from the 10th, 11th centuries, right? From Spain to Malaysia. And Europe has 50 million Muslims there now. And that most
It was
of
like
that happened-
500,000
Yeah.
just a decade ago.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. So it's by design.
We'll talk about it at the next session, but there was a great podcast who went over and was asking people, what do you think of this? But his answers will blow your mind.
Wow. Well, everybody, thank you for joining us. You're watching On the Right Side podcast, a weekly podcast. I'm David Zier. This is Steve Levy. We'll be right back. Don't go anywhere.
Have you noticed your money just doesn't stretch like it used to? Your paycheck feels lighter, and your savings aren't growing. The culprits? Inflation and increased money supply. They've both been quietly eating away at your purchasing power for years. Today, the dollar's value has dropped significantly. You feel it every time you spend money on goods and services. Back in 1965, $1 or an ounce of silver could buy you a gallon of milk. Fast forward to today. That same dollar barely buys a couple of coffee creamers, while an ounce of silver would get you 8 gallons of milk. Gold and silver have held their value for centuries. If you had 2,500 ounces of silver back in 1965, you could buy a brand new Ford Mustang. Today, 2,500 ounces of silver would buy you 2 Mustangs. Similarly, in the year 2000, 628 ounces of gold would buy a new $170,000 home. Today, 628 ounces would buy you a $2,500,000 home. The problem? 95% of Americans don't own physical gold or silver. They think it's too complicated and too expensive, but it doesn't have to be. We offer a membership program that allows you to buy gold or silver with as little as $1. You can buy fractional amounts, safely vault them, or have them delivered to your doorstep, and you can liquidate them whenever you want at the highest buyback price in the industry. Ready to protect your wealth and keep your purchasing power? Scan the QR code or go to tafw.soundmoney.com to learn more.
If the vote count is accurate, then how come the number of voters is different? And if it's not accurate, then why was it certified? We are suing Letitia James and the New York State Board of Elections for a conspiracy against fundamental rights. This is not about who won. It's not about what party. It's about the fact that they don't care about your rights.
All right, live from Studio 6B on a Friday night, live at the America First Warehouse. Live at the America First Warehouse on a Friday, Real America's Voice, all across the country, 103.9 LI News Radio, all across your radio, Suffolk County, Long Island. Glad you're in.
It's me, Joe the Box. And I'm John the Blanket with the America First Podcast.
That's what I'm talking about. The Fred Rubino Podcast.
I'm James Justice. We got Stephen Ruth over here. What are we doing, Steve? Fighting!
Welcome to the Patriots Podcast. Good evening, everyone.
Hey, everybody, welcome back to the On the Right Side podcast here at the America First Warehouse.
Welcome to Liberty's Cage, the podcast tearing down the walls of America's broken justice system.
Welcome, ladies and gentlemen, Kevin Downey Jr. Podcast. Be free, stay free.
Or you want to do it later?
I would say later. Let's
Hey
say-
guys, welcome back. You're watching On the Right Side, weekly podcast from the America First Warehouse. Go to the AmericaFirstWarehouse.com. I'm David Zier at Real America's Voice News. Steve Levy for the Center for Cost Effective Government. And we are tackling the issues of the day. I had an incredible week this week. We were just talking about the propagation of Islam throughout Europe, and that it's been allowed because to keep the Labor Party in power, and here it's the Democratic Party, right?
Yeah.
Same thing, right?
They learned from each other. And it was a great podcast. I wish I remember his name. Young guy from Long Island. I just saw him on Newsmax the other day. Just like that young podcaster went into Minneapolis and exposed all the fraud there at the daycare centers.
Yeah, Nick Shirley.
This guy went to Britain and just started interviewing some of the immigrants on the streets and some of the old-time Brits, to get their take on what's going on in Britain today. And he was talking to these Bengali immigrants and asked them, how long you been here? And they were talking to him, 5 years. Where do you live? Right over there in this, box row housing complex. Who pays for that? The government pays for it. For how long? Since we got here, So this was it. The government is just bringing them in and putting them on welfare. And then he'd go to the old-fashioned Brits that have been there for generations and they were asking some of the more liberal element on the street, what do you think of this? That you're bringing them in, you're putting them up for all this free stuff, and they were just ridden with white guilt and said, well, that's what we have to do to make amends for colonialism of years past. And if only these people understood that they were committing suicide. At one point he asked a person about Sharia law, one of the Muslim people there, and says, well, yeah, that's what we do. That's just the way it is.
No.
And, it's like you're committing your own suicide over there in England, and Trump's trying to stop it here, but the tide is tough.
That's why England's economy only grew at 0.1% for the first quarter of 2025. They are clueless and they are morons because their identity is gone. And they have Sharia law running the neighborhoods where the Islamic people were let in to stay.
Got no-go zones in France.
Yeah, because, if a girl gets raped, like in Birmingham in England, there's a lot of them. There's a lot of rapes. There's a lot of violent crime.
Which were covered up, David.
They don't
covered
allow
up
police
by the media.
They don't allow police there.
Right,
And
right.
they let these Sharia councils handle it. Now, thank God we don't have that in the United States. But, England's a disaster.
Is it that different? I mean, look, in England, the liberal press and the liberals in government purposely looked the other way while these rapes were occurring because they were afraid of being labeled as racist if they brought it out. What does that remind you of here in the States that's been going on in the last 2 months in Minneapolis, right? These elected officials, these lefties, were informed by whistleblowers that there's massive billions of dollars worth of fraud going on in the Somali community.
Yeah.
And Keith Ellison, the Attorney General, and Jacob Fry and Tim Walz, the governor, we're not going to touch that because they're our voters.
Well, Keith
we don't want to
Ellison's
be
a Muslim, and maybe had kid gloves on that stuff. But it's different in that, if you do rape somebody in the United States or you do an honor killing, chances are you're going to get indicted and sent to prison.
Hopefully.
That's different.
But can I tell you how crazy it's getting here now, how woke it's getting?
Yeah.
They had clips on Fox and Newsmax the other day where you had an African-American judge saying that I'm going to take into account, defendant, your background.
Yeah.
The fact that you were born poor, you were born black, you had it rough, so you will get a lesser of a sentence
Well, that's
for that horrible
root
thing
cause
that you
nonsense.
It's
that's
unconstitutional.
used,
You can't do that.
And you have to know where to draw the line because, historically there was some inequity in the system, in the
Yes,
court system,
no
right?
doubt, no
so,
doubt.
in Arizona, I remember a case like 30 years ago. A kid stole a Snickers bar, a black kid, and they gave him like 20 years in prison or something like that.
That was punitive.
But you need to administer justice, and if you want a civil society, you have to do that
Fairly and blindly.
For the
Right.
most part, America does not do that. And it's going the other way. It's gone the other way, where everything's the root cause, and you don't have white privilege and all this bullcrap.
Well, that's the whole basis
So-
of Marxism and the progressive left, where the whole defund the police movement and de-incarceration is basically that, hey, you might have raped someone, you might have murdered someone, but it wasn't your fault.
Well, they use
you were
that
a victim
to
of the
concentrate their
capitalist
base.
system. Right.
It's an exploitation. It's proletariat terminology, right? And it's what the Marxists did in the Soviet Union, and then
Sure.
eventually there was nobody qualified to run the companies or the government.
And it's their voter base, too. You figure all the felons that are in New York City. It used to be a time where you couldn't vote as even an ex-felon.
Yeah.
That's changed. But now there's a push by the Bernie Sanders crowd, and even here in New York, to try to get those who are presently incarcerated, allowing them to vote. So we're in a Alice in Wonderland world here.
Talk about understanding. It was Donald Trump that had empathy or realized that the Democrats wrote this harsh crime bill where the spouses of drug dealers were getting life
Guy named Joe
sentences,
Biden wrote it.
And the First Step Act helped get some people out of jail that maybe shouldn't have gotten life sentences for dealing a little bit of crack and stuff like that. So it's as terrible as it is. It wasn't scaled, that was Joe Biden, that was Bill Clinton, and it was Donald Trump who did the First Step Act. So it's like we live in a bizarro world right now. So
It truly is.
I
So
had
tell us about your travels with Chris Wright,
Yeah.
the head of energy here in America. Phenomenal things going on to retain and bring back our energy independence.
Yeah, I left Andrews Air Force Base at 0600 hours last Saturday, and I flew along with the Secretary of Energy and the Assistant Secretary of War, Mike Duffy, and Chris Wright from Energy. And we landed at March Air Force Base a few hours later, about 5 hours later. We got on the ground. We got off the plane, which was a C-40, which is a converted 737, which serves as Air Force One when the runways are smaller and they don't have room for the 747. And we got off, and we got on board a C-17 Globemaster. Actually, 3 of them had a mixture of components, but I flew on the only flight of a nuclear reactor in the history of the world. We transported it along with the Secretary of Energy and the Assistant Secretary of War from March Air Force Base to Hill Air Force Base in Utah. And we landed, and they took it to San Rafael Testing Laboratory. Now, this is a game changer, because these high-temperature gas-cooled reactors that have been developed, China and Russia have been doing them for a long time, and they're marketing them around the world.
How big are these things, by
They're
the way?
small. They fit in a semi.
Wow.
And
a
they're
semi-truck.
semi-truck, and they can power 5,000 homes. It's
Wow.
a 5-megawatt
Wow.
reactor,
Wow.
right? So it goes in with these SMRs, this small modular reactor technology that you see around the country. In Abilene, we have a 1-megawatt one being tested, and in Oak Ridge, Tennessee, we have a 30-megawatt one. But the difference between this is this brilliant company, Valor Atomics. These young people there developed this thing, and this goes in line with Trump's 4 executive orders for nuclear power to get strategic energy dominance and for our national security, because we face these threats, and China and Russia have led the way on these high-temperature gas-cooled reactors, but we have light years ahead of them in technology right now. If this thing passes, because Trump ordered that this thing critical test, and completes them by the 250th anniversary of America in July, then these things may be operational within 18 to 24 months.
Are these being relegated to national defense
Right.
type of things, or is this the future for AI?
Everything. So with
Because we know the demand for energy with these AI systems are
right, and our grid
humongous.
can accommodate that. So this can be operating off the grid. Now you've got these self-contained units. You could string them together. You could have 5 of them together. You could power Fort Bragg. You can open a base in Africa. You don't have to worry about their electric grid and non-infrastructure. This is a total game changer, because now we're going to be building these by the thousands. and it's going to change industry in America forever. And we closed Indian Point in New York. How are we going to get our energy when these AI centers open?
What is the NIMBY push going to be back? They're not in my backyard, folks. How are they
The
going to react
low enriched
to this?
uranium that are present on them, the spent fuel, getting rid of the spent fuel, but it's pretty safe, and they can't be weaponized. So we don't have to worry
They
about
cannot
terrorists.
be
No,
weaponized.
they're low enriched uranium, and they have
That's
helium
key.
cooling. It's very key, and they're non-threat. They can operate factories. They're going to be operating maybe bases. They could be used for a moon base.
So the goal is to mass produce these and
At
make them
scale.
commercial as
Because
well as
Trump's-
through the government?
Right, and Trump's executive orders have been, especially through his defense acquisition executive orders, which were codified by the NDAA in the House Armed Services Committee proposed bill that went forward. That was the new budget.
Yeah.
It's to expedite things like this at speed and scale and get weapon systems in the hand of our warfighters, but also to protect American strategic energy dominance.
This has to be
while
done.
still pursuing all the other forms of energy.
You know, you got Bernie Sanders and the progressives fearful of AI and saying, don't go, that they're Luddites, you know, that they think everything should be built by the proletariat by hand and this is a threat. But the bottom line is it is going in this direction. It's going to happen. The question is, who's going to master it? Who's going to control it? And are we going to be controlled by the communists in China, or are we going to control it for the world? It's a no-brainer. It's going to happen anyway. Sorry, Bernie. We have to master this and be at the forefront to make sure it's used for good and not for
Well,
evil.
China's ahead of us right now in some ways in the space race. They have a terrestrial-based laser that can knock down our satellites, maybe. The Russians may have a WMD in space. They've got 100,000 orbits they want to put into effect for new satellites. They may beat us back to the moon if Artemis 2 has more delays. So we have to get our act together. I interviewed the head of U.S. Space Command. I've been talking to the Defense Department. They are on track to do just that, and they're very motivated. Thanks to Trump. We'll be right back. You're watching On the Right Side, and Steve will open up. when
You've
we
worked
come back.
hard and saved, but inflation and increased money supply are eroding your buying power. Protect and grow your wealth with physical gold and silver. Sound Money. With a Sound Money wallet, your wealth stays in your control. Buy fractionally, vault securely, ship directly, and instantly liquidate your gold and silver at the highest buyback price in the industry. Real money, real ownership. Visit tafwsoundmoney.info or scan the QR code and start securing your financial future today.
The America First Ultra MAGA Store. For all your MAGA needs. We sell t-shirts, tumblers, flags, hats, sneakers, bumper stickers, and a whole lot more. The most patriotic America First retail store. The America First Ultra MAGA Store.
Live at the America First Warehouse. Live at the America First Warehouse on a Friday, Real America's Voice, all across the country, 103.9 LI News Radio, all across your radio, Suffolk County, Long Island. Glad you're in.
Corporate transfer. Fine professional, moving and storage, and inventory management.
America First Warehouse
was really the most patriotic venue that you can ever imagine. We wanted to build something for people to be able to come to and feel so comfortable and so relaxed, because there is nothing out there like it. We give an opportunity for people to really feel good about themselves and about this great country.
Hey, folks, welcome back to On the Right Side podcast, coming to you from Ronkonkoma, New York, here on Long Island, in the amazing The America First Warehouse. Thank you, Joe the Box, who's our main proprietor, who makes this all possible. I'm Steve Levy. I'm your co-host. I'm a former Suffolk County executive, New York State Assemblyman, and the think tank director for the Center for Cost-Effective Government. David Zare from Real America Voice. The name of your program on Saturday mornings at 8 a.m. is
Breaking Point.
Breaking Point.
I got
It's
a great
good one.
summarizing our trip, delivering that nuclear payload to Shaw Air Force Base, Hill Air Force Base in Utah, but also I had my time on the ground at Fort Bragg with President Trump and Melania addressing the troops, thanking them for their service and that in spectacular Venezuela raid.
We want to
get into that later.
We want to talk about that. And for those of you who are into the patriotism scene, you got to come to this warehouse if you're ever here. Just a remarkable place where we have amazing guest speakers and podcasts and other shows that are done. And by the way, if you want to check it out more, go to the app, America First Media and TV, and you can read all about it. Another app to go to if you're interested in getting safe money, it's the America First Warehouse. It's TAFW, soundmoney.com, where you can load up on gold and silver if you're worried about the volatility of our stock market and everything going on in the world today. All right, David, we touched upon so many different issues today. I want to segue. We were talking about Peter Schweitz's book, The Invisible Coup, and why the left is wanting all these illegal aliens to come in here. It's because they want them to count for the census and they want them to vote. And folks, don't buy the nonsense that illegals are not voting. They are to a certain extent. And the point is, the Democrats want it to become more likely, not less, that illegal immigrants can vote, which is why now in so many states, when you go to register your car or you go to any state agency, they will automatically register you to vote without finding out if you're a citizen or not. So here comes the SAVE Act, all right, which the Republicans are pushing. We know it's not going to pass through the Senate. It passed the House. You need 60 votes because of the filibuster to get it passed in the Senate. But it does a number of things. One of them is it requires proof of citizenship before you can register. And you got the Democrats saying, Jim Crow 2.0. We heard this one already. Biden said it after Georgia tightened up their laws. Guess what? After Georgia tightened up their laws, more African Americans voted than before the tightening up. But I asked this question, David. Why would anyone seek to block voter ID unless you want to cheat? Why would anyone be against taking dead people off the rolls unless you want to cheat? Why would anybody be for drop boxes and ballot harvesting, which remove the chain of custody of the ballot unless you want to cheat? Why would anyone lower the threshold for signature verification on all these mail-ins unless you want to cheat? The Democrats want to cheat.
Steve.
That's why they're against the SAVE Act.
That is so racist of you. Yeah, I was in Racine, Wisconsin at a Trump rally, and I interviewed Brian Steele the day that the day he introduced or co-sponsored the SAVE legislation to be, and that was in 2024. So finally, it's like another one of Trump's commitments, the Republican Congress's commitments. They're bringing it forward. And it's important because there's no reason why you wouldn't want. Now, in North Carolina, they got voter ID. In other states, they got voter ID laws. But the problem is, if they're giving you a driver's license and you're an illegal and you have ID, then, can you vote? Now, it's very hard to prove that illegals vote in the United States.
That's the point.
So,
it's what you don't know.
And like in Suffolk County, I don't think we have that problem as much. but in other places, definitely. Now, when you were the county executive, it was a little different. You couldn't get a driver's license in New York State if you had no ID. Like when I took my daughter for a permit, I needed 6 forms of ID and a DNA scan.
Or for the enhanced.
But the illegals need nothing.
Right. Quick fun fact here. You know the person who made her bona fides by fighting illegal aliens from getting driver's licenses in New York? Kathy Hochul, presently the governor, who's now a big leftist lib. She started off as a conservative Democrat from upstate as a clerk, and she became famous when she said, "We're not allowing illegal aliens to get driver's licenses." Long story short, boy, she's changed colors since then.
Remember during COVID when there were 1,000 people online waiting to get into the DMV? They were all illegals, and I couldn't get a road test appointment for my daughter for 3 months, 6 months, right?
Well, you know, you mentioned racist. Oh, that's so racist of you, Steve. What's more racist than Democrats saying, "Oh, black people can't get an ID"?
Right.
They're just too dumb or too lazy to get an ID.
Right.
They can't get an ID. What? That's racist.
Right, and even if you're disabled, you can still get in a handicap Uber, and you could go to your county center and get an ID. You don't need a license. You could just get a residency card, right?
Absolutely.
And
folks, don't buy the Democratic crap that, oh, you've got to go with your passport and all these documents when you go to the ballot box, the voting booth.
That's a lie.
No, you don't. It's when you register. So when you go to the voting booth, all you have to do is show your ID. But to be registered, you first have to prove your citizenship, as it should be.
Yeah, well, the Democrats don't want that, so
Unbelievable.
that's why we're where we're at. It's pretty incredible.
All right, listen, let's shift gears again. Did you see or hear about Secretary of State Marco Rubio's speech to the folks over in Munich? I thought it was fantastic, and here's why, David. I thought it was so great because it said everything that J.D. Vance did the year before, which was brilliant, but it did it in a more diplomatic way.
Right.
Instead of saying, in your face, it was like, look, we need to be together, and you're committing national suicide. We need you to stop, be strong, because we're stronger together.
Yeah, I mean, Europe was part of Western civilization. The Italians had concrete 3,000 years ago, and that it was built in the church, and the schism in the church, and the Renaissance, which was probably due to global warming, by the way. We had 100 years of good weather, but the Renaissance, all the incredible things that have come, and the beauty of Western civilization. Not that the old world doesn't have valuable contributions, because our numbers and coffee and paper came from the Arabian Peninsula, maybe, right? Reeds, paper, in Egypt. But, Western civilization took everything to another degree. And why don't you want to preserve that? Well, because the other people want to take it over.
It's such a juxtaposition of Rubio making that claim. Hey, Europe, be proud of your nationalism. Be proud of the Western civilization that led us down a path of prosperity and liberal democracies. And who's against Western civilization? AOC was over there bashing it. And by the
what
way,
an embarrassment.
Who started it all over here? The Reverend Jesse Jackson, who, God rest his soul, just passed away yesterday. But I remember the chants from Jesse Jackson back in the 70s and 80s. Ready? Hey, hey, ho, ho. Western Civ has got to go. Western Civ being courses on Western
he also
civilization.
Admitted to spitting in people's food when he was behind the counter. But listen,
particularly if they were Jewish.
He became friends with Donald Trump, and Donald Trump received the Rainbow Coalition Award in 1989 from Jesse Jackson. They wound up becoming friends. But Rashad Ritchie, I was watching him on the Young Turks because I always want to know what the enemy's doing. Right. He couldn't even give Donald Trump credit for praising Jesse Jackson, saying, you have to throw I in there. Like, I helped Jesse Jackson. I gave him free rent, because he put him up in 40 Wall Street also.
Yeah. Well, listen, Jackson was an amazing orator. And I really should temper my remarks because the man did just pass, and you have to give it some time. But listen, we'll talk about it another time.
Did he set up Martin Luther King?
No. But he was a grifter. Let's face it. He was at Sharpton before Sharpton, and the whole idea of the Operation Push was, hey, we're going to come after you guys. And Bill O'Reilly.
It's the shakedown.
It was the shakedown.
That
Bill
was a great
O'Reilly used to smash him, say, listen, we're coming after you. We're going to call you racist. We're going to boycott you. Unless
you give us
you
$20 million.
with us, come to our event.
He did that to Texaco.
Give us a little check, and it was masterful, and he got away with it. And Al Sharpton learned from the king, and he took the mantle over from him after the fact.
Yeah, he did. But Jesse Jackson, I think he tempered his message a little bit his last 30 years.
As a lot of us do as we get older.
You know, but
even George Wallace did. I mean, as he got
even
older.
Sharpton did. You know, he's on film doing like a 2-kilo cocaine deal back in 1978.
And accepting suitcases full of money, too.
Yeah.
Incredible.
Pretty exceptional. I just want to, maybe we could touch on it when we come back. I was at Fort Bragg for the second time in a month. Pretty awesome. Trump and Melania there. I want to talk about the Venezuelan raid.
Yeah, that's good. We'll talk about Iran, too. But, you know, we started off with Rubio on this. I'm going to say something. You might not like it. It's controversial, okay? I think he's the man for 2028. I know the stars and the moons are aligned to just give it to Vance, but Rubio, in my mind, allows us to continue to Trump policies and to be able to attract the middle, the independents, and the soft,
it's
the softer
a
Democrats.
lot better than he was in 2016. I think he's definitely capable.
Polished.
It's probably going to be Vance Rubio on the ticket as of now, but we're still 2 years out, a year and a half from that decision. But Rubio's been phenomenal.
I was a supporter of his in 2016 after my original guy, Scott Walker from bagged out because I loved his true fiscal conservatism.
I don't know what happened to him. I was
he
with
just
him
wilted,
years ago.
man. He just,
because he was so strong.
Yeah. He does some stuff. He does some commentary for Newsmax every once in a while. But I said, that's the kind of guignones you want for a president. He really took on those special interests over there in Wisconsin. And he paid the price. He had to face a recall and a lot of other things. But we need more true fiscal conservatives
You did
like
it.
that. I did
And they wanted to kill you.
Yeah, you get the scars for it. I'll tell you that. All right, folks, we got one more segment. It's on the right side with Steve Levy and David Zaire. We'll see you in 3 minutes, folks. One more to go. We did Rubio.
Have you noticed your money just doesn't stretch like it used to? Your paycheck feels lighter, and your savings aren't growing. The culprits? Inflation and increased money supply. They've both been quietly eating away at your purchasing power for years. Today, the dollar's value has dropped significantly. You feel it every time you spend money on goods and services. Back in 1965, $1 or an ounce of silver could buy you a gallon of milk. Fast forward to today. That same dollar barely buys a couple of coffee creamers, while an ounce of silver would get you 8 gallons of milk. Gold and silver have held their value for centuries. If you had 2,500 ounces of silver back in 1965, you could buy a brand new Ford Mustang. Today, 2,500 ounces of silver would buy you 2 Mustangs. Similarly, in the year 2000, 628 ounces of gold would buy a new $170,000 home. Today, 628 ounces would buy you a $2,500,000 home. The problem? 95% of Americans don't own physical gold or silver. They think it's too complicated and too expensive, but it doesn't have to be. We offer a membership program that allows you to buy gold or silver with as little as $1. You can buy fractional amounts, safely vault them, or have them delivered to your doorstep, and you can liquidate them whenever you want at the highest buyback price in the industry. Ready to protect your wealth and keep your purchasing power? Scan the QR code or go to tafw.soundmoney.com to learn more.
If the vote count is accurate, then how come the number of voters is different? And if it's not accurate, then why was it certified? We are suing Letitia James and the New York State Board of Elections for a conspiracy against fundamental rights. This is not about who won. It's not about what party. It's about the fact that they don't care about your rights.
All right, live from Studio 6B on a Friday night, live at the America First Warehouse. Live at the America First Warehouse on a Friday, Real America's Voice, all across the country, 103.9 LI News Radio, all across your radio, Suffolk County, Long Island. Glad you're in.
It's me, Joe the Box, and I'm John the Blanket with the America First Podcast.
That's what I'm talking about, the Fred Rubino Podcast.
I'm James Justice. We got Stephen Ruth over here. What are we doing, Steve? Fighting!
Welcome to the Patriots Podcast. Good evening, everyone.
Hey, everybody, welcome back to the On the Right Side podcast here at the America First Warehouse.
Welcome to Liberty's Cage, the podcast tearing down the walls of America's broken justice system.
Welcome, ladies and gentlemen, Kevin Downey Jr. podcast. Be free, stay free.
The America First Warehouse, where our hearts will always be.
Podcast. I'm Steve Levy, former Suffolk County executive and New York State Assembly member, here with David Zaire from Real America's Voice with a dynamic duo, mixing it up as we do every Wednesday live at 2 o'clock from the America First Warehouse. Okay, David, you are the world traveler. You were at Fort Bragg with the president and the first lady.
Yeah.
Tell us more of what transpired.
Yeah, so I've been spending a lot of time focusing on rapid capabilities, which is part of Trump's defense executive orders that are speeding up stuff to get to the speed and scale for delivery of weapons to our warfighters. So Fort Bragg has been front and center with that. They opened up a JIOP about a month ago, which is Joint Innovation Outpost, which is basically taking private industry and academia, partnering with the military, getting stuff in the hands of the warfighters. And I saw specific examples of it on the base. I went back to the base for Donald Trump and Melania last Friday. We covered that for Real America's Voice News, and he was congratulating the troops. Now, Fort Bragg is massive. It's 50,000 people. 200,000 people depend on it. It's, it's 250 square miles. It's bigger than Brookhaven Township over here.
Wow.
It's a big place, largest base in the country by population. And they have the 82nd Airborne, the 18th Airborne. They've got the 75th Ranger Regiment out of there. It's an incredible place, incredible leadership, the best men and women in the armed services there. And they participated in the JSOC, Joint Special Operations Command, which is also based out of there, which was formed after Operation Desert One that failed in the desert when we tried to rescue our hostages in Iran when the C-130 crashed with the forward air refueling post with the helicopters, and we lost all those people because the branches were competing with each other. And then in Grenada, we lost 6 Navy SEALs out of the back of a C-130 because the Air Force was on different schedule with the Navy or something when one was using Greenwich Mean Time or something. So they testified before Congress, and I spoke to Robert Gormley about this, one of the SEALs who testified before Congress. He was a combat swimmer with the SEAL teams. And basically, they formed Joint Special Operations Command, which can dip into any one of the services at any time to do it. So this extraordinary mission in Venezuela, it was the largest, most sophisticated operation for helicopters in the history of man. We had 35 choppers. We had 160 aircraft. Used this
they're doing something right.
And we use this thing called the discombobulator, that Trump calls it, which took out all their Russian S-400 defense systems, S-300 or 400
They
systems.
made the Cubans look like high school kids.
They didn't even know we were there.
Right.
And we were in and out. The whole mission was only 2.5 hours. We were in and out of there in like 15 minutes. We got Maduro. We've been fed intelligence since 2020 with the CIA. I think there was something called Operation Cardinal, something like that, where there was a Cuban, where there was one of his security people was feeding him info. So it was an incredible raid, and it shows the level of sophistication and the leadership under Donald Trump and Pete Hegseth, who's just light years ahead of where we've been in the Pentagon. No more DEI. No more DEI.
It's changed the dynamic, the military dynamic worldwide, because now these mullahs in Iran, now these, the scum in Hamas, they have to know, well, it's not a matter of America having to put 5,000 troops on the ground. We can take you out while you're sleeping with a missile through your window, as Israel did to some of their enemies.
Or blowing up the guy's bed.
Right.
They planted the bomb 6 months before.
So the mullahs now know that when Trump is sending the aircraft carriers into the Gulf, it's not a matter of us having to put in paratroopers into Tehran. They know that we can just put up a cruise missile, put up a fighter, and we can go directly toward their leadership. So they're saying, hey, I don't really care if 1 million of my people are killed, but this guy can put a rocket through my bedroom window at 3 a.m.
Yeah, so at Fort Bragg, there's a saying that, when the president dials 911, it's the 82nd Airborne's there. Now, they joined forces with Pope Air Force Base next door, which is now Pope Field, and they incorporated it in pretty much to Fort Bragg like other bases around the country have had. And the significance of that significance of that, sorry, I'm having a hard time talking today. The significance of that is that we can get our troops anywhere in the world in 18 hours. Anywhere
So
in the world.
What's going to happen in Iran now? I think what he wants is regime change. I don't think this is the whole nuclear thing. I think that's the pretext. We had the dissension in the street, and the big rallying cry was, don't do what Obama did, which was just to lay off and not
Give them
participate.
$5 billion in cash. on
Exactly.
pallets.
But also, back then, in the Obama term, he saw the agitation in the street, and a lot of people said, support them, support them. So now this came and went so fast on this round, and it kind of caught us where we weren't able to provide the support on the ground to the point that it overthrew, and those guys were vicious. They were just on the top of buildings, picking people off with snipers. So what's his end game? I think Trump wants the pretext not to bring in our troops, but to take out the mullahs one by one. What do you think?
Well, I do. It's really complicated because we were talking about the dynamics of this because Trump and Israel, I believe, want Pahlavi in there, who's the son of the Shah.
Bad move.
But the history is the Shah rounded up a lot of college students
Ah,
and a lot
he's
of
a
leadership
tyrant, a
of
tyrant.
the MEK.
That's what made people rebel.
And they were like the Marxist socialist group that led the revolution in
Right.
~79. The mullahs hijacked that revolution out from
There's
under
your
them.
red-green mix, right?
So the rightful leader of Iran should be Mariam Rajavi, who's the wife of her husband Rajavi. She's in exile in France right now, and the NCRI, the National Council for the Resistance of Iran, should be the rightful leaders. The complications over there are that the Iranian Revolutionary Guard own about 3/4 or half of the oil and the fuel, and they also own the telecom. So it's hard to get a movement to get the fervor and the energy without like 10,000 Starlinks everywhere. And that was Obama's problem in 2017 as well. And Valerie Jarrett probably didn't want that either. And she's a Persian, but she's, was in bed, I think, with the Iranian Revolutionary Guard, in my opinion.
Well, we're going to see what happens there. And then you have in Gaza, part two, where now Trump is saying, okay, the Israelis withdrew. Now we've got to create a new government and build this place up. So he's got this board, and he's chairman of the board. And the Israelis are a bit trepidatious about having the Turks on there and letting them get embedded. What's going to happen here? Can we actually see light at the end of the tunnel where we bring in this international group that starts running Gaza? And can we get Hamas to lay down its arms? That's key.
Well, the Turks want to restore the Ottoman Empire.
Sure.
That's why they have their hands.
Erdogan's a bad dude. You can't trust
he's a
him.
bad guy. And the same in Iran. You know, and I think Iran borders Turkey. If not, it's right there. So I think Armenia borders Iran as well. But part of this agreement that Trump negotiated with Azerbaijan and Armenia was to open up this isolated region of Armenia that was blocked off by parts of Azerbaijan so they can have a trade corridor. And Trump did that. Very exceptional. But it also could give access into Iran. So there's a lot going on.
Well, the biggie is, Trump's goal is to create a whole bunch of Trump towers. Kidding with the Trump Tower part, but he wants to make it into a resort because it is beautiful property there. But can this be done in a way where investors will feel safe?
He said that about South Korea. It's like the world's most beautiful beaches.
Well, it's true, though. And listen, if you made the people there have some economic hope, if you gave them economic hope, maybe they wouldn't turn to Hamas to be, where they're presently dependent on Hamas.
Yeah. And, there's gas and natural gas and stuff off the coast of Israel and Lebanon. But the Russians, I think, got some of that.
Well, you got to create the atmosphere so that investors
economy.
feel secure to do it. All right, we got 2.5 minutes. Got to talk about Mamdani, the commie in New York. He said he wants to make New York City more affordable. So now he's saying, okay, here's how I'm going to do it. I have to raise taxes, income taxes, on the high earners, or if you don't give me that approval, Governor Hochul, I have to put in place a 9.5% property tax increase on the middle class homeowners throughout New York City. Hey, New York City residents, you asked for it. You got it.
Yeah,
What's going to happen?
Texas, for the first time, is outpacing Wall Street in keeping in job growth in the financial sector. It's the highest rate of speed of growth for Texas right now because we only have about half of what we did. So more of those expected to leave. With that higher income tax bracket, forget it.
Well, I want to just see
Property
what kind of
taxes he wants to
revolt.
raise.
Right. How is this making things more affordable in your city when you're going to impose a 9.5% property tax? But let me tell you something, Mr. Mayor. You're lying to the people of your city when you say, I only have two choices, raise property taxes or raise income taxes. I was a county executive who had to run a county of 1.5 million after the real estate collapse. And I'll tell you, there's another option. It's called controlling spending. I put the word out to the people, all my department heads, you're going to cut 10% this year, then we did it the next year, then we did next year, and guess what? We didn't fall off the axis of the earth. We survived, and we didn't have to raise taxes like that. He can do it. He doesn't want to do it.
The municipal unions didn't like you.
That's for sure.
Some of them.
And I've got the scores right
Yeah.
there.
All right. Thank you so much, Steve. We'll see you next week, right?
Yeah, you know, we are going to be back here as we always are every Wednesday at 2 o'clock. David Zare, where do we find you with all of your writings and your shows?
Yeah, Breaking Point, 8 a.m. this Saturday. Download the Real America's Voice News app. We're on Amazon Prime. We're on Samsung TV, Channel 1175, Dish Network, Channel 219, Pluto, Channel 470. And don't miss it. I got a great show. My interview with Secretary of Energy Chris Wright, my trip to delivering that nuclear reactor from California to Utah. Unbelievable stuff.
Awesome. And if you want to find my writings, folks, that you'll see on Newsmax or Washington Examiner, Washington Times, and other places, it's stevelevy.info or the Center for Cost-Effective Government.org. We loved having you for the hour. We'll see you next Wednesday at 2.
Thanks, guys. All right, I got to jump on a conference call.
Right behind you. All right, my friend.
A symbol of unity for the patriots of America.